can't start till you get here.
Afternoon. I call to order the Lynchburg Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, August 28th, 2024. The first order of business is the approval of the July 24th, 2024 minutes. Are there any additions or corrections? Have a motion to approve?
Make a motion, we approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The next order of business is the following new business, where we will consider the adoption of the Diamond Hill Neighborhood Plan as part of the city's comprehensive plan 2013-2030. The proposed plan encompasses the Diamond Hill neighborhood located between 12th Street and the Lynchburg Expressway, bounded by the Central Business District to the north and Kemper Street to the south. Staff has worked with residents and stakeholders for over a year in the development of the plan. The neighborhood planning framework and recommendations are built around Diamond Hill's anchor institutions, community streets, housing, marketplace, and parks and historic resources. And before we begin, I just want to remind there's a time frame for any opposition. The group will be a maximum of 10 minutes. And then any individual citizens wishing to speak will be allowed a maximum of 3 minutes each. And Rachel will be keeping the time on that. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of Planning Commission. It is our pleasure to have this plan in front of you today. It's the culmination of about a year's worth of work that Charlotte Lester has led. Charlotte has been with the Planning Division for a while now. She's our neighborhood planner, but this is her first time at Planning Commission. So again, this is based on community engagement with our residents and stakeholders of Diamond Hill. Based on that input, the plan talks about kind of Diamond Hill's current conditions, goals for the future, and strategies to get us there. So Charlotte will be giving us an overview of that information. Thanks.
Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. As Rachel said, I'm Charlotte Lester. I'm a neighborhood planner with the Department of Community Development. And over the last 18 months, I've been working with the stakeholders and residents of Diamond Hill neighborhood on the development of the Diamond Hill Neighborhood Plan. So I'm pleased to provide you today with an overview of the planning process and the resulting recommendations. All right, so let's start with the purpose. The purpose of the Diamond Hill Neighborhood Plan is to position Diamond Hill neighborhood as an identifiable, service, diverse, and connected neighborhood. Those are qualities of a healthy neighborhood. And so why is a neighborhood plan important? The comprehensive plan for the city of Lynchburg 2013 to 2030 recognizes that Lynchburg is a city of neighborhoods, and it directs us to build strong neighborhoods, to conserve the city's unique places and resources, to conserve and interpret historic elements, to promote business vitality, to enhance the attractiveness of our gateways and travel corridors, and to enhance mobility for all residents through safe and convenient access to transportation choices. So today, it's the recommendation of the Planning Division that after discussion, the Diamond Hill Neighborhood Plan be forwarded to Council for inclusion in the city's Comprehensive Plan 2013 to 2030. So the study area for the Diamond Hill neighborhood plan includes the area between 12th Street and the Expressway and between Kemper Street, the Southern Railway there to downtown, but it does not include the area covered by the Downtown 2040 plan. The Diamond Hill area is unique for a number of reasons, one of which is its proximity to downtown, its proximity to the Lynchburg Expressway, its proximity to the Kemper Street Transit Hub. And there are a number of unique resources in the neighborhood, including 2 local historic districts, the Diamond Hill Historic District and the Pierce Street Renaissance Historic District. And there are importantly 5 anchor institutions in Diamond Hill. The Parks and Recreation Neighborhood Center, the Diamond Hill Baptist Church, which is over 150 years old, the Payne Elementary School right on 12th Street, Dunbar Middle School also on 12th Street, and the Hunton Randolph Community Center. So to understand the neighborhood, the planning process began with research and then moved into community engagement. So some of the research included, first of all, the development of a city staff project team with members representing various departments in order to best address and understand the challenges and opportunities in the neighborhood. And so we also did desktop research clearly as part of this process to understand the baseline, have a baseline understanding of the neighborhood. So the land use, housing, demographic information, circulation, all of those things that we look at in development of plans. Staff conducted windshield surveys driving through the neighborhood and then on foot walking the neighborhood to understand it at that pace, the pace of a pedestrian. Documenting the process of walking through the neighborhood with photos and notes, which are incorporated into the plan draft that you see. And there was, of course, the development of a web page where all of this information could be kept and viewed by the public, reports from our meetings, the snapshot of the neighborhood, all of that information in one place available for the public. So then our engagement included stakeholder advisory group, public workshops, questionnaires to try to dig deeper into certain topics, and community meetings and events, and we'll go into those in a little more depth here. So the stakeholder advisory group was developed with the intention of getting broad and well-rounded representation from individuals and organizations in the neighborhood. So individuals living in the neighborhood, organizations located or working within the neighborhood. So at the same time, the group had to be manageable in size. There were about 27 people representing 17 groups at work in the neighborhood on the stakeholder advisory group. Stakeholders were engaged early in the process to ensure open and meaningful involvement, to represent views of their larger constituencies, and to help shape the content of the plan. And staff met with the project team, and staff met with the stakeholder advisory group in advance of each of the public workshops. Questionnaires, I mentioned that in order to better understand some specific points, we administered questionnaires. So we looked at housing preferences. We looked at real estate investment, understanding how some local real estate investors were understanding what their interest is in the neighborhood, in redevelopment and housing and commercial properties as well. We looked at urban food systems, particularly the convenience stores that are located in the neighborhood. We tried to gauge interest in a porch light campaign, just thinking about safety and what role that residents can play in that. And then we tried to understand what folks' preferences were for their priorities or the strategies in the plan and how to prioritize all of these actions that we had come up with. So Public workshops were a very important part of the process. In addition to the stakeholder advisory group, we had large open public meetings. The first workshop was held in March of '23 at the Diamond Hill Neighborhood Center on a Saturday afternoon. And it was really an open house kickoff, and participants were able to engage with city staff and stakeholders around different stations in the room to understand and give feedback on the framework, which we'll get into in a minute. We had a second workshop looking at vision and goals at the Payne Elementary School in May of '23. The third workshop was really focused on strategies and actions, and that was in August of '23. And then we had the final workshop, workshop number 4, where I provided an overview to the attendees and had an opportunity to get their feedback and incorporate that into the plan. In addition to that, staff attended community meetings and events such as the Community Care Day at Diamond Hill Neighborhood Center, Pierce Street Garden events, meetings with the Diamond Hill Historical Society, the Diamond Hill Neighborhood Watch, and 40 Ways Coalition, among others. So all of this research and feedback from the stakeholders, questionnaires, discussions, workshops, all of it was incorporated into the neighborhood plan. Ultimately, it is the neighborhood's plan, and it will require the commitment and advocacy of the stakeholders to work with the city and partners to see it through. So I mentioned the planning framework. It's based on 5 physical features of the neighborhood. You see at the center there, land use, right? That is, we're looking at the physical environment. So the 5 elements that we looked at, though, are in relation to land use are the anchor institutions first. Secondly, we looked at community streets, the hallways of the neighborhood. Third, we looked at housing, which was a really important topic in the neighborhood. Understandably. Fourth, we looked at our neighborhood marketplace. And fifth, we looked at our parks and historic resources. So today, for each of these areas, I'll provide you a summary of the common themes that we heard for each topic. And I will share the goal that we have and the strategies that this plan recommends to get us to that goal. Of course, this plan overview today is just an overview of the highlights, and the specific actions and more finer grain detail is within the plan, but we'll just be looking at the highlights today. So let's start with anchor institutions. So what did we hear and what did we observe? We heard that support for youth and families is needed, just generally. We heard that there's a need for early childhood care and education, and that post-secondary education opportunities are needed. These were some gaps. So the goal for anchor institutions takes us to imagine a future state of Diamond Hill, where Diamond Hill schools, churches, and community centers expand their services as anchoring institutions, places where the cultural, educational, and social activities of the community are focused. So that's the resulting goal. And then the strategies that take us to that goal include recognizing the Diamond Hill Community Development Corporation as a backbone organization in this whole endeavor, expanding our social infrastructure, expanding educational opportunities, and improving public health and safety. The second area that we focus on is community streets. Again, those are the hallways of the neighborhood. And what we heard was there's concern over just general pedestrian safety. There's concern over violent crime. There were 3 separate incidents of gun violence in the neighborhood that resulted in 3 children's deaths. So that was of concern. And then undeveloped lots and vacant buildings. That was of a concern. There are a number of undeveloped lots and vacant buildings in the neighborhood, which have an impact on the way people feel on their community streets. So the goal, again, imagining a future state for our community streets, what would that look like? Where do we want to be? So Diamond Hill Community Streets unite the neighborhood, provide access for motorists and non-motorists, and promote neighborhood identity, health, comfort, and safety. The strategies that we developed in order to reach that goal are to develop 12th Street as a multimodal street, right? That's a really important street in the neighborhood. It's a boundary street, but it's a really important street with a lot of potential. It is, the second strategy there is to improve community streets for non-motorists, just generally throughout the neighborhood. And to improve neighborhood gateways. There are a number of ways into Diamond Hill. And fourthly, to encourage natural forms of monitoring and responsibility for public spaces. How can residents be involved and engaged in that process? The third area that we looked at is housing. So the concerns that we heard and observed were vacant, condemned, and derelict properties, a lack of safe and affordable housing was a concern, as was housing pressure with redevelopment. So our goal, again, envisioning a future state for the Diamond Hill neighborhood. Diamond Hill homes are the spaces where residents can raise their families, sustain their daily existences, display their identities, and contribute to the neighborhood's image. So the strategies that the plan recommends to achieve this goal are to increase the number of safe and affordable housing units, to preserve affordable housing in both the rental and the sales market, to identify and remediate rental housing in substandard conditions, and to support historic preservation as an important aspect of neighborhood identity. Okay, the fourth area of the planning framework is the neighborhood marketplace. So staff heard and observed these concerns. Essential goods and services are located outside of the neighborhood. People have to travel to get what they need on a day-to-day basis. There are vacant storefronts and undeveloped lots on 12th Street, and that impacts the perception of safety. And then more employment opportunities are needed nearby. So again, the goal, imagining a future state where we want to be with the neighborhood marketplace. Diamond Hill Marketplace is the place where neighbors find the basic goods and services that they need to enrich their daily lives. And what are the strategies that we're recommending to get there? First, to establish 12th Street as the neighborhood marketplace. To support Kemper Street as a neighborhood-friendly employment area. To activate underutilized space. And to encourage locally owned small businesses. The fifth and final area of the planning framework is parks and historic resources. So what we heard is that park space is limited. We've got the very wonderful, small but mighty Diamond Hill Neighborhood Center, which is about 1/2 an acre in size, and it does a lot of great work in the community. But park space is generally limited in Diamond Hill. We heard that historic resources are undervalued. And we heard that public spaces are deteriorating. So the goal for the Parks and Historic Resources, again, imagining the future state, Diamond Hill Parks and Historic Resources connect residents to the natural environment, to each other, and to their shared history. So the strategies that we're recommending to achieve that goal are to ensure a park within a 10-minute walk of all residences, to invest in our historic resources, to preserve neighborhood history and strengthen neighborhood identity, and to improve the existing green spaces that we have throughout the neighborhood. So overall, the plan offers strategies that will guide the policymakers, staff, residents, developers, anyone involved in the neighborhood in realizing the potential of Diamond Hill as a strong neighborhood. Again, one that's healthy, it's identifiable, diverse, service connected, all of those qualities that make for a healthy neighborhood. So it takes time to make all of these actions, set them in motion. So we have created a 10-year vision for the plan, and you see I love this photo, it's the Dunbar track. So you see the dashes and the hurdles there. That's all part of it, right? So the dash, that's really our short-term recommendations, things that will take between 1 and 3 years. The 1 miler, it's medium-term recommendations, things that will take a little more complicated, but are medium-term for 3 to 5 years. And then the hurdles, those are the more complex projects that, while possible, they're still complex and definitely achievable with effort over the long term. We're considering that 5 to 10 years. And it's all important in order to bring the plan to life. But yeah, so the plan gets us to the starting line. That's also a very important thing I think we all recognize. To implement the plan, it really does require the involvement and advocacy of our stakeholders and working with the city to bring the plan to life. So I'm happy to say that we do already have some projects underway. While drafting the plan, we pursued opportunities to set in motion some of the plan recommendations. So I'm going to give a brief summary of some of the projects that are already underway. Some of the projects are large in scope, and others are smaller, impacting, for example, a single block. But both approaches are needed to achieve the goals. The projects underway include a Thriving Communities program, participation in that, the Dunbar Community Schoolyard Project, Pierce Street Improvement Project, the Hunton Branch YMCA nomination, and community events. So let's start with the Thriving Communities program. So the Central Virginia Planning District Commission, in collaboration with city staff and GLTC, applied for and was selected to participate in the competitive Thriving Communities program through the U.S. Department of Transportation. So this program includes, it facilitates planning, technical assistance, and capacity building to support communities our size with some of our challenge, maybe working in under-resourced communities to advance transportation projects and infrastructure projects. And so we will be working with ABT Global to receive planning, technical assistance, and capacity building support for 12th Street redevelopment planning and the integration of that plan and support into the Diamond Hill neighborhood plan. So you see here a vision of 12th Street in the rendering as a neighborhood marketplace. And the Thriving Communities program will really focus on the 12th Street area. And I'll dig into that a little more on the next slide. So let's look at that. So it really focuses on transit-oriented development along the 12th Street corridor. So again, we're working with the ABT Global to plan and get technical assistance and capacity building support for transit-oriented development on 12th Street. So what is transit-oriented development? It's development that supports vibrant, sustainable, and equitable communities by creating dense, walkable, and mixed-use environments near transit. So 12th Street is near a lot of different transit options along 12th Street itself and at the nearby Kemper Station, where we have the Greyhound, we have Amtrak, we have GLTC, and we have the Virginia Breeze. Like, there are a lot of transit options at the Kemper Station. So 12th Street is a focus of this Thriving Communities program. In addition, included in the work plan will be the city-owned site at 12th and Kemper, which you see envisioned here. It is a critical location, of course, near the Kemper Station Transit Hub, near the Lynchburg Expressway, along the medical corridor, close to downtown, close to Midtown. It has the potential to be redeveloped as a mixed-use facility, which would improve both the community marketplace and housing. The next project I'd like to review with you is the Dunbar Community Schoolyard project. So our city council has approved $478,000 through the FY25 Community Development Block Grant funds for phase 1 of the Dunbar Community Schoolyard improvements. First, what is a community schoolyard? So a school campus is a school campus utilized when it's not being used by the school as a green park-like space for the community, open to the public, again, when it's not used by the schools. So it's a common sense solution and a cost-effective solution to increasing and improving the park space in the Diamond Hill neighborhood. The shared space would be transformed into a positive place for neighborhood residents, for youth and families and neighbors to enjoy. The use of the campus as a schoolyard would increase access to park space for Diamond Hill and College Hill residents, right? Since Dunbar is right on 12th Street, the dividing line between the neighborhoods. In fact, 75% of Diamond Hill residences would be within a 10-minute walk of the park. And that's sort of the standard that the National Recreation and Park Association recommends, that parks are within a 10-minute walk of residences, urban residences. So the campus is over 16 acres in size. It has spans more than 6 blocks and has multiple entrances and access points. Investment in the schoolyard would improve the school campus by improving pedestrian walkways, seating, and investing in low-maintenance landscaping, a very important point. We always have to think about maintaining what we have to be good stewards of our resources, and also, of course, enhancing the recreational spaces. The Pierce Street Improvement Project is the next one I'd like to share with you. This project is funded by the FY23 Community Development Block Grant. It will improve Pierce Street conditions and pedestrian safety by establishing a tree lawn on the southwestern side of the 1200 block of Pierce Street. So you're looking at that block right here between 12th and 13th Street. It is notably the entrance area to the Pierce Street Renaissance Historic District. If you see in the background, there's a tree lawn on the 1100 block, and there's also one on the 1300 block, but not on the 1200 block. So we will be removing asphalt and installing the tree lawn as part of that project. So the street parking will remain in place. It will narrow the road slightly, which will calm traffic, which was a concern that neighbors had. The tree lawns, like I mentioned, it will put the street in alignment with the 1100 and 1300 block, and it will provide shade to the neighborhood and serve as a safety buffer between the sidewalk and the street. And that's an example of a small project that impacts one block, but it has a big impact in a number of different ways. The next project I want to share with you is the Hunton Branch YMCA nomination to the Historic Registers project, which is also funded by the FY23 Community Development Block Grant. This site is at 12th and Taylor Streets. It was built as a dedicated recreation facility for Lynchburg's Black youth and families in 1956 during the era of segregation. It served as an important recreation facility and social gathering space for the Black community. The building was designed by one of Lynchburg's most accomplished 20th century architects, Pendleton Clark, and the building's namesake, William A. Hunton, carried the YMCA mission to Black communities across the country. So overall, recognizing the history of the Hunton YMCA contributes to the neighborhood identity and helps to tell the story of the neighborhood, the city, and America. In 2023, the city began working with the Hunton-Randolph Community Center Board and the Virginia Department of Historic Resources for the initial steps in the nomination process before engaging a consultant, Purvis Historic Preservation, to draft the full nomination. And that's in progress. She's had public meetings and gotten input from folks who experienced the Hunton Branch Y during this historic period, and there's a lot of interest and excitement around this project. All right, and lastly and finally, the importance of community events cannot be underestimated in this plan. In addition to the robust offerings of all of the anchor institutions, the 5 anchors that we talked about located in this neighborhood, there are also more nonprofit and cultural organizations working in the neighborhood, activating the spaces and creating opportunities for neighbors to gather and enjoy life in the neighborhood. These are the types of actions, when sustained, that support an identifiable, service, diverse, and connected neighborhood. So today, it's the recommendation of the Planning Division that after discussion, the Diamond Hill Neighborhood Plan be forwarded to City Council for inclusion in the city's comprehensive plan 2013-2030. Thank you.
So Rachel, we're handling this just as the same way as?
Yes, standard public hearing. If you're part of a group, you get 10 minutes to speak, and you should identify that group. If you're an individual speaker, you get 3 minutes to speak, and we'll hear from those in favor first.
Okay, thank you. Who is here to speak on behalf or in favor of the petition? And you can come forward one at a time, and please, you can, sir, yes, please come forward and state your name. And is there a sign-in sheet up there? If you could just sign in, please.
What is my occupation? Okay, I'll finish. Okay, I just want to make a short statement in support of the plan. My name is Dennis Newton. I live at 505 Washington Street, which is located in the Diamond Hill Historic District. I am the president of the Diamond Hill Historical Society. The Diamond Hill Historical Society is represented on the stakeholder advisory group, and members of the Diamond Hill Historical Society support the Diamond Hill Neighborhood Plan. That's my statement.
Thank you.
Okay, now I'll finish this.
Good afternoon. My name is Grace Dean. I live at 1723 Monroe Street in Diamond Hill. I've been a resident there for over 50 years. and I stand in support of the Diamond Hill Neighborhood Plan. My neighbor Elizabeth and I were a part of the stakeholder meeting, but I stand also to say thank you in advance for your approval of this Diamond Hill Neighborhood Plan to be included in the city's 2013-2030 comprehensive plan. I know that as the city's planning commission, you know better than we do the impact and the intent that the approval of this plan will have not only on the Diamond Hill community, but on the city of Lynchburg as a whole. Just like a multifaceted diamond, I believe that once this plan is approved, adopted, and began to be implemented, that the true beauty and worth and value of this long neglected community will shine through. So again, I say thank you, and I stand in approval of and support of this plan.
Thank you. Ma'am, do you mind signing in, please? Thank you.
Sign in.
Who else would like to speak in favor?
Okay.
Just state your name and sign in, please.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Cindy Ferguson. I'm a resident of the city of Lynchburg in Ward 1, but I have served on the stakeholder committee as the director for the Center for Community Engagement at the University of Lynchburg. During this process too, we really want our students to know of the needs and of our larger community and be a part of impact and change in a variety of ways. We believe that our role is to better understand our community's needs by building relationships and building community, by listening to our community, by understanding everyone's roles and advocating for and implementing change, and understanding the rich history of our city. We often have students that are a part of several things in the community. One, tutoring and mentoring other students within our public school system. We have a student from the Bonner Leader Program that worked with the Lynchburg Fire Department and helped to develop the Walkabout Wednesdays, which the Lynchburg Fire Department was recognized for by our governor, to walk through our neighborhoods and to assure that neighborhoods like Diamond Hill would have fire alarms and fire detectors and things like that that they need in their homes. We've also had lots of students who have participated in lots of volunteer opportunities in the Pierce Street Gateway area. And we're excited about this historical area because of this rich history. We know that a lot of our citizens, even of Lynchburg, don't understand or know that on Pierce Street, 2 blocks of Pierce Street has the most historical markers of any 2 blocks in our country, and it's based on people, not architecture. So for our students, our public students, our private students, our citizens to know of these things, it's really important for us to bring this about. And being a part of this process, it really has been an honor to build these relationships, to build community with those that live in the neighborhood, that work in the neighborhood, and how we can be a better part of building this process and implementing this plan. So we're here to advocate for this plan and the ways that we can work together with the city to implement this and make positive change for our community.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Cindy.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Telly Tucker. I serve as the Director of Music at Diamond Hill Baptist Church. I'm also a resident of Diamond Hill, 710 Rosalind Street. First, I want to publicly acknowledge the hard work, the outstanding work that Charlotte Lester and her team of city employees did in engaging the community in this process. I participated in a number of the workshops and community engagement sessions. And I stand in support of the plan. I think there are some, as the speakers have come before me, there's some really critical elements of the plan that will really bring vitality and energy to this community. of which, of course, the history, which I think we all know and love and appreciate, but also certain elements of reviving some of the commercial mixed use and particularly housing elements to address some of the challenges we face with missing middle housing and the flexibility allowed by some of the plan recommendations. So I want to thank you. I think I want to be on record to say that as with any community, and it's consistent with many of the Virginia first cities, it requires co-investment from the city as well as private sector investors in the neighborhood to bring a plan like this to fruition. And so I look forward to being part of hopefully a collective solution, a collaborative solution with both the city and its residents in the Diamond Hill community. So thank you for your support.
Thank you. Is there anybody else here to speak in favor? Is there anybody here to speak in opposition? Okay, the public hearing is closed, and now we'll open it up for questions from our commissioners.
Just a quick question. But first, Charlotte, thank you. This is really good work, and want to thank the city staff as well for and the stakeholders that participate in this process. It's nice to see your vision come to life on paper, and I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. Just curiously, on a policy side, are there any policies or ordinances or other major areas of impact that might not be represented here that you can foresee this plan impacting?
Specific one in mind?
Well, I guess I'm more curious how this robust plan might impact the historic preservation aspect of policy, or will we see any policies like that evolve to greater fuel the vision of this to move forward?
You want to take that, or? The plan does recommend exploring some potential zoning changes, possibly to allow more flexibility. Specifically, I think around housing, there are some, very large houses, very large homes, and while we want to be cautious when we increase density, we want to do it gently and make sure it's in a way that is not negatively impacting the neighborhood. It doesn't mean you got 8 bedrooms, you get 8 apartments. That's not what we're saying. It's more of exploring ways. This does not make specific zoning recommendations to say we're going to put apartments everywhere in Diamond Hill. It's right. Evaluate cases where slightly higher density may be appropriate, and under what conditions will we do those things? Would we allow it with owner occupancy, for example? We currently allow accessory dwelling units, even in our lowest density residential. Is it something where that would be appropriate at a slightly higher density in some cases? Plan makes kind of general recommendations for us to explore those things, but we're not changing any policies with the plan itself.
Maybe as a supplement to your question, is the goal of this, is the thinking along the lines of if we can get more people down here to 12th Street, and that this will improve the living environment of people in the Diamond Hill. The reason I said it is a supplement to this, the zoning. There are some large houses down there. If you look at Washington Street and even some of Little Rivermont, some of these old houses, and if you've been in real estate a long time, I know Kenzie has, and I have, these houses go through kind of a reverse bell curve where they're kind of the height of where everybody wants to live, and then of course they go through a pit where nobody wants to live there. And if they're nice enough houses, eventually they'll redevelop into something nice, and they may even go through a phase like my house was. I have a 1928 house where it was divided into 2 apartments at one point, and now it's a single house. So taking some of these large historic houses down there. There's also about 1 million tiny houses down in this area and close by that are urban blight, or they're blighted, or they're vacant. And I mean, I guess what I'm asking is by changing the zoning, is the goal to see these houses develop back into single family houses again? Or is it to see some of these develop into apartments, in which case you're going to see students and low renters come in and increase the density without increasing the standard of living potentially? So now I see the plan is some of the improvement. I hate to be the naysayer. I'm just curious where the thinking is. You can improve what 12th Street looks like, but if half a block over, it's still crime-ridden and urban blight, it's not going to be a desirable destination for people to come downtown. So do we have extended plans? I assume we do, as the comprehensive plan moves along, to develop and do something with these areas too. I know the city has sold off some of these urban blight properties. Tom is back there. I know that was one of his initiatives a while back. So what I'm getting at is, what is the goal of changing the zoning in these areas for the residential areas?
Well, I want to be clear. We're
Long way to
not
get there.
changing the zoning at this point. We don't even know that will be ultimately a recommendation, but it's something to look at. Do you have thoughts, Charlotte?
So we'd like to bring the housing that is currently vacant or condemned or in a derelict state back onto the market, right? We understand that there's a need for additional housing. And by bringing the homes back onto the market, we're improving the neighborhood and adding housing. So we're trying. I think the Neighborhood Services Division has been working diligently on code enforcement and on these challenging areas. The good news about an older neighborhood is that it's got a lot of character and it's a lot of variety. And the challenge is that older homes are more challenging to keep up and more expensive, and there may be a shortage of contractors who are able to work on these types of homes. So we recognize the challenges, and we are trying to look at a way forward. So yes, it would, by bringing these houses back onto the market or looking at the development of undeveloped lots where we have infill opportunities, doing all of that does naturally increase the density of the neighborhood, which then also supports the marketplace. It kind of works together well.
I think too, I guess where I come from is the strength of this plan in my mind is it has a large part of that. Sorry about that. A large part of the support for this is coming from the community. And in my view, there have been a number of things that have been identified as areas where we can improve not only the lifestyle of current neighborhoods, but certainly improve it going forward. And I guess in reference to where you're coming from, Chuck, is I see this as more of a, if this is the landscape we want to see, then when it comes time to talk about the comprehensive plan, that's where questions of zoning and I think the ideas of I'm not sure what we can do with the historical foundation, but those things would be things I think we would discuss. Because I think, to me, I don't have any fault at all. Matter of fact, it agrees with what I think, so naturally it's right. Is that the areas that have been identified are really important and critical. And I feel challenged as we move towards a comprehensive plan to make sure that we support that landscape, for lack of a better phrase. And to me, that's where those questions about, what can we, are there zoning? Are there ordinances? Are there things that we can do to support efforts like this? So I think those are great questions. I just think the question needs to be in a meeting. Doesn't need to be, I mean, it's not in this plan, but it's something we need to keep in mind because of this plan. Is sort of the summary.
Well, I think it goes even beyond that. When we're considering petitions, and there's a neighborhood plan for that area, then we need to explicitly see how that petition fits in with the neighborhood plan as part of the comprehensive plan. And I think we do that, but we need to, as we get more and more of these plans, we need to make sure that we're doing that, and that it's part of the paperwork we get. This fits in because of this reason, or it doesn't, just like we do with the future land use map. So that's where this is for a planning commission. I think that's where the neighborhood plans serve their most valuable role, is in our day-to-day considerations of the petitions. And
I think the biggest danger we run into with these is that we saw this happen on Fifth Street, where we have property owners that really might not engage, so they're not part of the process. And then we foist a change on them. And I do see that on 12th Street, like possibility of moving to a different kind of zoning that might not be friendly to what people there want. So I think it's always important to make sure that those folks are engaged. But that's a long process, and that's not part of this. I think it's a great vision. And most of the buildings along there would fit well within the recommendations of the plan in what I see. So I really like what they did. I've lived on Washington Street, so I've spent lots of time. I remember when they built the little pocket parks, back in the 90s, I think, on Grace Street. Some little houses down there, some great little properties. And I think it's just kind of waiting for the investment in a thing like a park. We look at places like Peaksview Park, and people from all over the city go to Peaksview Park. But there's communities where people don't have the park access. So I love that you include that with the schools. I guess one question I would have is, when it comes to parks and public facilities and the schools are closed, would you consider things like some bathroom facilities within these? Is that something they do when they develop community parks around schools? Do they have some facilities that are used during the weekends or in the summers?
It's a good question. And we're with the phase one improvements that would be outside of the scope, but for the larger plan for the development of the schoolyard, that would definitely be a consideration. I think the school is looking at that for their athletes as well, their student athletes as well. It would be beneficial all around. It's a good point.
Great, thanks.
I could talk to that a little bit. I've had family members who, did it all, played football, played baseball, basketball. That whole idea of a shared facility is crucial, because you can just tell as a parent, that we're always short of areas to play. So I thought that was a fabulous idea to use that. So that was a big thing for me, and a good example of, just to go back to what you talked about, where there's some things we can do close up, and there's some things that are going to take longer time. And I think the early successes are important, because that's what snowballs into bigger things. And I think anytime you can instill a sense of pride, then that tends to have a ripple effect.
It's amazing what the work that you've done on this, and I'm fully behind it. I did have a question though about the engagement evenings that I guess there were 4 or 5 of them. I'm just curious how much of the neighborhood actually showed up. Did you have a good number of people come? Was it steady throughout all of them, more than normal or less than normal, or just?
So I think there was an average of about 35 attendees for each of the workshops. Some of them had upwards of 40, in the 40s.
That's good.
And I think the lowest one was 24. The highest attendance was when we had the 3 workshops that were on a Saturday afternoon, and that worked out well. We had a evening workshop at Payne Elementary, and that's where we had slightly lower attendance of like 24, I think, but still a good representation. We got a lot of good work done. So I was pleased with the neighborhood response and turnout. On the overall attendees list, there were over 100 people who attended a workshop, at least one.
Yeah, that's great. And all of the plans that we have put in place, there has been, a trajectory and we've seen it happen, all over. And so this is such a great start to that. But I agree with what Dave said about talking about the zoning and I mean, because we have put like the downtown plan into place and we had that, but then we didn't change the zoning. And then there was some things that might be happening that aren't necessarily what the vision was at the beginning. And so I don't know how to handle that. It's not like you want to change all the zoning right up front, but I think it will be something that will be an interesting process, as we adopt this and go forward with it.
I'm not sure if that was a question that or something you're looking for a response to, but the answer is, of course, one thing at a time. And, Charlotte's done a great job on getting a head start on some of these things, as you can see from the things she's got in motion. But I think a lot, will be driven by the folks in this room and the others that have participated in the stakeholder workshops. Seems like Diamond Hill's a very engaged group of folks, and they're very proud of their neighborhood. And, when they can take the charge and, remind us of all these things that we said we'd do in the plan, that's very helpful. And to know that they still are behind it too. They'll definitely be involved going forward.
Yeah, I agree. Any other comments, questions?
If they're not, I would move that we approve the plan as presented.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So it's passed. Thank you very, very much for all your hard work on this. I'm sure it was just tremendous. So, any other new business or old business?
So you are scheduled to have, I know your agenda says next regular meeting is September 11th, but that is the normal kind of public hearing meeting. But you are scheduled for a comp plan work session a week from today. I've had to be out of the office a little bit for personal reasons recently. So I'm still confirming that we are on, normally would have already done that for September 4th. But as of right now, we are. So we'll follow up and send out that agenda as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you.
I had that at 3 o'clock too.
Yeah, yes, 3 o'clock for September 4th.
It's from 3 to 5?
Yes.
Yeah.
What day is that on?
A week
week
from today,
from
September
today.
4th. Should have gotten a calendar invite.
Okay. Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye.